Good afternoon. I'm Mark Martin, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina and founding Dean and Professor at High Point University Law School. And it's my honor and pleasure this afternoon to have former Associate Justice Bob Edmunds of the Supreme Court of North Carolina with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chief.
Well, I am so excited to have you here today, and even though we worked together for 16 years on the Supreme Court, you had quite a rich career before we had really ever met each other. But let's start with this. Why did you decide to go to law school? There were a lot of possible career options open to you.
There's really not that much of a story there, Chief. My family, most of the folks that I grew up with, were either in business or medicine. Law school allowed me to sort of continue education without really making any decisions for 3 years.
So you go to law school and you enter public service at, I think, relatively young age. Tell me about your appointment by the President of the United States to the office of United States Attorney.
Well, things worked out pretty well. After law school, I served in the Navy as a line officer, not a JAG officer, and then came back home, Greensboro, and began a job as an assistant district attorney for 4 years, starting in traffic court, winding up prosecuting career criminal felonies, and was hired from that job to be an assistant federal prosecutor, which I enjoyed. It was similar to the state job, except trying federal felonies. And after about 3 or 4 years working in that job, the assistant United States attorney, the presidentially appointed United States attorney, resigned. He finished his term. He wanted to move on, and he left rather quietly. So I just put up my hand and said, I'm interested in the job, and was appointed by President Reagan to a term, and I was able to stay in that job through the term with the first President Bush.
Now, is there a particular case that you authored that you really feel like made an impact in some way beyond the walls of the court and impacted people in our state or in one of our communities?
Well, I thought about that since we discussed it, and one of the opinions, I'll tell you about one of the opinions and preface it by saying all judges know the sensation that comes from doing something that you wouldn't do if you were a free agent. But you're bound by the law, you're bound by precedent. You have to make decisions that you sort of go, I don't really like that one so much. But one of the cases I wrote, and I bet you'll remember it, was I think it was Walker versus Fleetwood Mobile Homes, where a father had bought a mobile home for his disabled adult daughter. And the mobile home that was delivered was a catastrophe. No front porch, the walls didn't meet, the plumbing was exposed. It was just unlivable. And the seller wouldn't take it back. And so the father brought suit on behalf of his daughter. And we held that he could recover under a statute that provided a pretty substantial recovery for him and for his daughter. The law could have been interpreted more than one way, but I think we read the court. It was a unanimous opinion for the court. We agreed that this was just not right, that she was entitled and her father were entitled to recovery.
Are you glad you went to law school?
Yeah, that seemed to have worked out okay,
Well, thank you for all your exemplary service to citizens of the state and obviously to the United States. So one final question. There was a day when you and I were in college and wondering what we were going to do when we graduated. Do you have any morsels of wisdom for prospective law students as they weigh and balance what they'd like to do with their lives? If they decide to go to law school, do you have any tips for them? Maybe things that you know now that you wish you would have known then?
Well, as I told you, I sort of blundered into law school, not knowing exactly what to expect. And I will tell you quite candidly, I didn't like law school. I didn't like it much at all. I mentioned to you that I served in the Navy. When I left law school, I didn't have any particularly attractive job offers. I wasn't sure where I was going to go. And an opportunity, I thought, this is something I would like to do. So I served in the Navy for a while, then came back and lucked into a job as a prosecutor. And what I've realized over time is just, thank goodness I stuck it out in law school. There were several times when I took active steps that could have left me leaving, like applying to graduate school. But I thought, no, they're not going to force me out. I'm going to see this through. And so my advice would be, stick with it. Law school really isn't learning, what's in the books. It's an education on how to think, and it can be applied in so many ways. Not everybody, by any means, that goes to law school practices law. They wind up in all sorts of different fields. So I would say yes, it's 3 years well spent, and it can open doors you never imagined you might walk through.
Well, I first want to thank you for your service to our nation, to our profession, also for your kind willingness to serve on the extended faculty of the High Point University Law School. And thank you so much for taking time to speak to me today.
I can hardly remember a time we didn't know each other, Chief. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you.